Hello, welcome. I am Joey Yu. Today I'm going to be showing you all at home how to draw a dancer whilst listening to some pieces of music and trying to bring that energy of the sound into the drawings and the paintings that we're going to be doing. First of all, we have to get our materials ready. So I've got all of my materials here. If you don't have anything, you can pause the video, run and get it, and then we can start. But first of all, you're going to need some paper. This is the size that I'm working with, and it's quite big. If you want bigger paper, you can stick some pieces together at home maybe, but the bigger the better, I reckon. So you can do big brush strokes. I'm talking of brush strokes. You want some paint brushes. I've got some big chunky ones, like this. This one's pretty big. And I've got sort of medium-sized brushes and really, really tiny thin ones as well. So I've got a range, so I can do detailed and I can do big. So that's very important. Then you're going to need some paint. I'm using some acrylic paint, which looks like this, but whatever you have at home works. So if you've got poster paint, if you've got watercolors, go and get that, and that will work just as good. You're going to need some water. Oh, I just put my finger in the water. You're going to need some water in a little cup, and that will be so you can clean your brushes in between, and then a paint palette to mix all your paint on. Now, I've already put my paint on this. If you don't have a palette, you can use a piece of cardboard. Maybe you've got an old cereal box you can use to just pour the paint on and mix it together. So that's that. That's all of our materials, pretty much ready to go. But first we need to warm up our bodies. So very important, just like a dancer, like the dancers we're going to be painting later on, we have to warm up our bodies. So think, is there any dance moves that you like to do to warm up? I like to do a shoulder shrug, like this. Maybe moving my hips like this. And just punching the air. How do you like to dance at home? I don't normally dance like this. I dance a bit more fast. But this is just a good way to stretch your arms out and get warmed up, especially if you're doing big motions with your arms. So now we've warmed up our body. I think it's time to warm up our minds. And how can we do that? We can look at some artwork to get some inspiration for our drawings later on. So I've prepped some special artworks for us to have a look at. The first one is a wonderful artwork by an artist called Christopher Richard Wynne Nevinson. And this one is called Dance Hall Scene. This is a beautiful painting. Well, it's a mix of painting. It's got gouache, which is a type of paint, and graphite on paper, which is like pencils. And this is a picture of the Albert Hall dance. So it's an actual real dance, but it doesn't look 100% realistic. As you can see, he's stretched proportions, he's made things look very angular, very pointy, and that's because he didn't want to just capture the dancers, he wanted to capture the energy of the dance as well. So you can see he really exaggerated things. He exaggerated the colors are so bright and vibrant. He was part of a movement called Futurism, which was all about all the new things that was coming into the world, so aeroplanes, cars, and so he was trying to make his painting look modern and dynamic, just like all this new technology that was coming into the world. So I really, really like that one. Now we're going to look at something that looks very different. This is a bunch of sketch drawings by an artist called Paul Arago, and they're all called Drawings for the Dance. So Paul Arago was an artist that did really, really beautiful big paintings. But I wanted to show you these ones because they were her sketches for a big drawing. So I think they're a lot looser, they're a lot more playful, and you can see how quick and energetic she painted them. So she used ink to create a wash over the page, and then a very detailed, probably a fine fountain pen maybe, to sketch all of the detail. And I like this because you can see how quick she did it. And I think you can sort of imagine the mood a little bit more. You can see it's quite moody and dark and mysterious. What kind of music do you think they're listening to in these drawings? I think it's something quite haunting maybe, whilst they're out on this big bit of land it looks like a cliff maybe. And the last one we're going to look at is by an artist called Tate, and this one is Untitled Bacchus. But this one doesn't have any dancers in it. It just has a giant looping brushstroke going across the page. And I chose this one because I thought it was quite interesting. There's no dancers, but it's almost like the artist, is the dancer. And you can see, to paint this image, he probably had a really large brush and he was reaching up into the air and going back down again, up into the air and back down again. And that motion is sort of like he's doing a really, really long dance routine, going up and down on the page. And I think it has a really nice energy to it. I really like the bright red colour as well. So we're going to be channeling Cy Twombly and our other artists into the work that we are doing now. So I'm super excited by those pieces. And now we're going to go into our own artworks. Now that we're warmed up in our bodies, we're warmed up in our minds, we've seen some inspiring things, and we're going to go into our first piece of artwork. So we're going to listen to a piece of music now, and when we're listening to it, I want you to pick out what sounds you can hear, all the different elements, and if it's quick or if it's slow. Maybe you can imagine what colours the music sounds like and just the general mood. So let's see what we can hear. There we go. Now, what did you hear at home? For me, it sounded very light and plucky. I liked all the short little bursts of sound, and it almost sounded like tiptoeing to me. So I'm imagining maybe my dancer is tiptoeing. What do you imagine? And if I think of colour, I think of light, very happy, gentle sounds. So maybe we can look at our palette and imagine what colour does that sound like. So for me, I imagine maybe pale tones. So maybe like a pale pink. What colours do you imagine? Maybe a yellow? I'm going to mix a pink together because that's the colour that I heard. Maybe it's a light frothy pink. Maybe you heard a sort of duck egg blue. And then we're going to take our colour and we're going to interpret that sound onto the paper. So as you remember, it was very light and dainty, very doop 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 doop. So I'm going to make that doop 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 sound onto the paper. Okay. So how do we do that? I'm going to do this doop 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 doop. And then again. Doop 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 doop. Is that how you heard it? Maybe you heard a different shape. Maybe you saw it more as something like this. Doop 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 doop. And they were all separate. I heard them kind of joined together like that. And you don't have to be neat, you don't have to be tidy with it. You can make the shapes even bigger if you want. I'm just doing doop 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 doop. And it's quite fun to interpret all of the different layers. Maybe if you picked out a different sort of instrument, you can include that too. And then once you've got down your sound, you can include your little feet. I heard tiptoeing, remember? So I'm going to do one little foot here, and then maybe a foot here. So they're tiptoeing along. And then what shall the arms be doing? I think mine are going to be up in the air. Because it sounded quite like a ballet song. Maybe they're doing a little ballet dance. And there's my little head. What shall we do the hair? Shall we do some flowing hair? Maybe you imagined her hair to be scraped up. I think my hair is going to be flowing. Like this. Do, 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 do. And that, I think, is me. That's what it sounded like. That's my first sound drawing. My first dance of the day. Shall we hear the next one and see how different it is? Let's take this one off and let it dry in front of us. Dancer number 1, very light, very elegant, tiptoeing along. So now we've done that first dancer, time to listen to something very, very different, hopefully sounding. Sounded completely different, didn't it? Now that one, to me, sounded much more dark in colour, and I liked how dusty it sounded. It sounded very, very smoky and dusty and low, very mysterious. To me, that sounds like a dark, dark blue. Maybe to you it sounded like a brown, maybe a dark orange. Whatever you imagined, you can bring it together on your colour palette. But I'm going to mix together this nice blue shade because that to me sounded very blue. And I really liked the way that it went down when it was going dum, 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 dum. So I'm going to try and capture that. And I also want to capture that sort of dusty sound as well on my page. So have a think of how you would draw it, how you'd paint it on the page. To me, I'm going to take my nice big loaded brush, and get paint everywhere. And then I'm going to try and recreate that sound on the paper. So how was it? It was like a dum, 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 dum. So let's try and do that. Dum, 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 dum. I think that looks exactly how it sounded to me. Dum, 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 and kind of descending down the page, going down the page like that, and then the other side. To me, it sounded like someone was storming down the street at night time. So this is my dancer storming down the street. Really, really big strides. And maybe the arms are going across like this. So let's do an arm going back like that. How are you drawing your arms? Maybe your arms are going up in the air. Or maybe your legs are sneaking down a staircase. It also sounds like that. Let's draw some shoes. Let's do some brown boots. Brown boots? I mean, dark blue. Well, maybe we could do some brown. Let's mix some brown in. If you don't have brown, remember you mix all of your colours together, it makes brown. Okay, there's a little shoe. A nice little boot, another boot, and let's draw a hat. I think my dancer's wearing a hat because he's mysterious. He's a very mysterious dancer. Like that. There's a little head. And then a hand. Shall we draw the other hand as well? How are you drawing your hands? Maybe your dancer's wearing gloves. This is the other hand. I quite like how that looks. Shall we add some detail on his his jacket. Dum, 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 dum. And just like the music, I think it sounds quite suave, quite smart. So of course I'm going to make him wear a suit. That's a tie. There we go. What have you done at home? Maybe yours looks completely different to mine. Maybe you drew big hair. Maybe your dancer doesn't have any hair. But this is my dancer number 2. To music number 2. My suave, storming dancer, storming into the night. As you can see, they look very, very different, which is great because I think it captures the different sounds that we were listening to. And now we're going to take it to a completely different place with our last track, our last piece of music, track number 3. So this one's going to be a lot more fun and upbeat. So have a listen to this one. That one was really, really fun. Did you like that one? That one to me sounds like a party. So my dancer is definitely at a party. They're doing a party dance. And to me, the sound was very different to these two, whereas this one was very soft and short sounds, and this one was long and dusty. This one to me sounds very bouncy, and it feels like it's going up and down, and it's very jolly and happy. So to me, I'm going to look at my color palette, and I think it's going to be maybe a green. It sounds quite fresh and quite lively, so I think green for me. But what are you going to go for? Maybe it's red. Maybe red it sounds passionate, so maybe it's a red, or a happy orange. Orange is such a happy color. Yellow is a happy color. So have a look at your colors and imagine what it sounds like to you. Everyone will hear something slightly different. So I'm going to go for green, and I'm going to make that bouncy shape that I heard, mixing my green together. Maybe I'm going to make it a lighter green, mix it with a bit of yellow. Okay, and now we're going to bounce it across on our page. So it was very bouncy like this. There was also a fun zip sort of sound that was like doo 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 doo, like that. So maybe you can interpret that in your artwork. I'm going to do it like this. I quite like that shape. And let's do another one, shall we? Down here. It was such a bouncy song, so I'm making these bouncy, bouncy lines. And again, doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be neat, as long as you get down that energy of the song, and energy of those sounds. And this one feels very Cy Twombly-esque, that artwork that we looked at earlier. The very bright red giant looping lines. This one is very similar. Maybe you have some watercolors and you're making it very wash-like the Paula Rego sketches that we did. It's up to you. That's my swirly whirly shapes. Time to add our dancer's face and our dancer's hands. So let's do that in this dark, like a dark red. Let's do that. So we've got a little shoe. My one's wearing a little boot. Like that. You can spend more time and make it look very, very, very good. Or you can get it down really quick like this. A little hand. Oh, mine's wearing like a mitten. And another one. And then I'm going to do a different color, I think. Let's do some red hair. And a little head. There we go. That's my dancer. Dance number 3, complete. So let's take that down. I'm quite happy with that. I think they look quite graphic and quite abstract, almost like it could be a poster and you could stick it on your wall. There we go. All of the dancers complete. Let's lie that one down so it can dry. It's running away from me. It's dancing away. There's our 3 dancers, all complete. I think we're done here. But of course, this is something that you can do at home with any piece of music. Anytime you listen to music, you can imagine all of the sounds, think of the colours that they remind you of and what shapes they remind you of, and you can draw something or paint something at home. Thank you so much for joining. I hope you enjoyed that. And if you created a piece of artwork yourself, you can get your adult to take a photo of it and upload it onto any of the Tate socials and hashtag #TateKids, and so we can have a look and see your wonderful, wonderful dancers dancing around. Thank you, and see you next time.